Hello, parents, grandparents, future parents, and curious minds. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Steven.
And I'm PJ.
And this is
Dad's Discuss. Thank you for the finger guns again.
Yes.
That always helps.
Yes, we will do those until the day I die. Or stop recording podcasts. So what you been got going on there, PJ?
Well, for all of our listeners, I'd like to let you know that me and Steven have literally just been shooting the shit for the past half an hour. It's been quite entertaining, and maybe we'll be able to sprinkle in some of those tidbits into some of our future recordings. But so far, things have been going okay. It's been a couple weeks since we've gotten together and recorded, but we've just been very, very busy, actually. You know, it's the holiday season. An election season also this year, so there's just been a lot going on for our family and the world in general.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully get a little bit more consistent in the studio and have more consistent publishing, that's for sure. But, you know, with new year comes new opportunities, so hopefully things slow down. And I'm going to back off from the mic a little bit because I feel like I'm leaning in really close and you guys are going to have your eardrums blown out.
Oh, we don't want that now, do we?
Or I'm going to have to edit more.
But yeah, we do hope to be more consistent in our ramblings and help, we're going to cut that part. And hope that you guys continue to listen to us in our journey of discussing fatherhood.
Yeah, good times and bad. I mean, it's always a struggle, but hopefully we get together more often and talk about it and work through things and all these heavy topics that we have on our mind week to week, day to day.
For sure.
So today, what are we talking about, PJ?
I think today we're going to cover careers, which I'm interested to see our handy-dandy whiteboard up here, what that means to you, because I know what it means to me, but I would like to hear your thoughts when you wrote down the word careers.
Yeah, so I was never interested in a specific career path for most of my life. And I don't know if that has to do with parents or if it has to do with my own mental state. But now that I'm finally starting to solidify my viewpoints and my trajectory, I wouldn't mind talking about how each individual strategies or other people's strategies when it comes to parenting and guiding your kid to a specific direction. I see only a few instances of, you know, my family, my wife's family, and a few other people's family, how their kids turned out, and I want to know how the successful career paths happened and the unsuccessful ones happened. I don't know if we can cover that all in one episode, but
and we can
parenting your kid in the right direction, basically.
Okay, yeah, we can always record additional episodes related to this topic, but that's interesting. I don't think that's what I was expecting you to say, but I like where that's going. You mentioned about solidifying your thoughts and how you expected your life trajectory to be, and I can say that when I was younger, I always thought that I had a very good understanding of what I wanted to do when I grew up, and that was do something related to buildings and structures and engineering, which is what I did go into. But I can honestly say that parenting and being a father was never really on the forefront of my mind. And it wasn't until I was an adult and got into a relationship with, you know, the woman that I love and ended up marrying that I ever even had that as a thought. I was quite content to go through life without having any children, and that changed after I met my wife.
Oh, wow.
But it sounds like you kind of always considered that you were expecting to be a father and looking forward to that aspect.
Yeah, that's probably the one thing I was most excited about was being a parent. I don't know why. I don't know if it is from religious upbringing or just an innate sense to want to raise children, or I don't know. It was just the only goal I ever set was, you know, become a dad someday, and I needed a job to, you know, sustain a family, and somebody told me that if you become a computer engineer, you get to play with computers. So that's how I ended up where I am.
Nice.
But I never had the desire to be a computer engineer, and it's just kind of where the chips fell where they may, and it was successful, I guess.
Okay, well, so yeah, that's quite a bit different than how I was. I'm intrigued to know more. So when you first started your secondary education. Is that what they call it? After
Yeah.
high school.
Postgraduate. Oh no, that's grad school. Yeah,
Yes.
secondary.
Yes. When you started your secondary education, did you know that that's what you were going into? You hadn't decided yet.
Oh yeah, it was just most of my education up until after my undergrad was just going with the flow. It's like, oh, I'm in this school, I'm in high school. Oh, this counselor said this might be good for me, I'll do that. So I just started taking, I didn't even know how to program or what programming was, other than the fact that, something had to be written to get my video games to work going into college.
And we were very big into video games then.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was like, I get to touch computers and figure out how games work. That's good. And then I get there and like when I'm in my engineering career, all the other guys I hung out with had been programming like since middle school. Like they already understood
right.
computers. And I was so lost. But luckily they carried me up. So that was good.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool, Steven. I
Yeah.
don't think I realized that because, we've known each other for a long time, and I've always known that, you were headed on the computer path, and it made sense to me, but I guess I didn't realize that wasn't something that you had pre-planned out previously.
No, I was a lost sheep most of my life. I mean, I still feel like that sometimes, but now I got my head on straight, and I think I know what I want to do. So
Definitely interesting looking back, and they say hindsight's 20/20, but looking back on your lives and seeing like some of the major life decisions you made, or even some of the minor ones that have led us to where you currently are, and then seeing how that ties into your worldview is always very interesting to me.
yeah, it's once you realize we're all just a bunch of beings floating around the universe on a marble and trying to figure out how we want to experience life. That's when you kind of wake up and say, what do I want to do?
Yep, and I agree with that. And back to what I was mentioning about fatherhood never really crossing my mind. I've told many people this before, but my wife Kimber had 2 children before I met her, and seeing her being a mother and parenting the boys and then spending time with them is really what kind of opened me up to the idea of having a child myself. I am convinced that if I were to have met someone else who didn't have kids, that I probably would have pushed pretty hard about not having them. Yeah. Seeing the way that Kimber parented the boys, being who she was and such a good mother, that definitely is what made me be like, all right, I can do this.
Yeah. I think you gotta give yourself some grace too that it may be hard, but you will get through it and the kid will get through it as long as you keep them alive, and they'll turn out to be something.
Oh, yeah.
But it does increase the weight of responsibility on you. That's why I think a lot of parents like to start with a goldfish and then let them get a cat and then a dog and then just escalate the amount of responsibility until you have a kid, and then you realize, oh, none of that was even this hard. But at least you're prepared a little bit.
Yeah, that's especially growing up here in Alabama with the family unit, being not what it used to be, and education being severely lacking. I think our sexual education was in 7th grade for maybe 4 hours at most.
One or two videos.
Right. So I don't think that we adequately prepare our children from a school perspective of what parenting is going to be like. And even in that sense, I don't think like I was prepared to go into fatherhood before it actually occurred. We mentioned this on a previous podcast, but the whole trial by fire, I don't think that most people who don't have kids truly understand how much is involved and what goes into being a parent without having experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, you can call out the people that claim they have their dogs or their children, and it's like, yeah, if you can't have kids or you choose not to have kids, they basically are the next level of children, unless if you're gonna go get a horse or something because they have even more needs. But
oh yes,
but nothing that I've experienced on the level of responsibility and teaching and taking ownership and feeding and clothing and bathing is comparable to having children, and it's a wonderful experience, albeit exhausting and tough.
Yep. And I bring that up, and I know we've talked about it just for a little bit, and I'll tie this into the careers episode in that being a father and being a parent in general is, in and of itself, a career. You may have your 9 to 5 or your 7 to 7, whatever your job work shifts are, but being a father in and of itself is a full-time position. And so it's something that if you do go into unprepared, or even if you are prepared for it, you have to constantly work at it. You know, you might make some mistakes, you'll have some wins, but it's definitely a career in and of itself on top of whatever other career path you're on.
Yeah, no matter, I mean, you got the stay-at-home mom career. That's one of the saddest things we've lost in the traditional family structure, and one of the best careers I think you could have, really, because that's raising the next generation and making sure everything's okay at home. But there's benefits to dual incomes and things like that. So, I mean, stay-at-home dads, too, are great, but they're usually the last to volunteer to stay home.
And I think it's one of those things that my perspective in life definitely has shifted the older I got. You know, as a kid, you sometimes resent teachers and things like that, but, you know, they're doing their best to educate you so that you can be the best version of yourselves. And I know when I was younger, I used to hear people say that, well, you know, my full-time job is a stay-at-home mother, and my first thought was, well, that doesn't sound like very fun. Like, why did you choose to do that? But my perspective has shifted now because I just understand how much goes into it, and it may not be what that person, you know, thought about their life, but I hope they can make the best of it and do it with a good intentions and a full heart, because it is a full-time position.
Yeah. And I think I want to call out one thing. I made a joke the other day, which I don't know if Catherine laughed because I did it over text, but I was essentially calling out the old model of stay-at-home moms that, you know, you see the image of them cooking and cleaning and taking care of the kids, and the dad works and he comes home and gets to relax. And I was like texting her, and I was like, okay, I'm on my way home. I'll just grab a beer and sit on the couch and put my hand in my pants while watching some football. And I was like, I don't know if she laughed, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I just don't think you see that much anymore. And as you mentioned, dual incomes in today's society, it's that type of model is just non-existent unless you were in a very well-off class, just because we can't afford it. You know, it is near impossible to try and raise a family, hell, even raise yourself and provide a house and roof over yourself and your family unless you have like that additional money.
Yeah. And I think it's possible, but I also think the model of, you know, dad comes home tired, he should still do something to contribute to the family, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The mom's tired too. You guys both need to step it up. I think it was kind of, back then though, that model from the good old days, if you submit to that, the men had much, much harder labor jobs too. I mean, now it's more of a mental game at the job site than a physical one, so maybe it did make sense back then that the dad needed to just decompress and drink a beer and ease the pain of back-breaking labor.
And we still have those positions, and I respect the trades. I've always been involved, you know, kind of in the heavy industry construction sector, but I can agree that with my, you know, white-collar job, as they call it, the office position, I come home much more exhausted after having spent a day with my kids than I do working.
Yeah, because it's more mental, and you're craving some more physical movement rather than so you can help out around the house because you need to move. You've been sitting all day.
Yep. And it's just not as exhausting running around chasing everyone, everything like that. But career-wise, I would say that I'm actually very happy with the job career that I've chosen. And now, after having so many years in your field of computer engineering there, Stephen, you feel like this is what you enjoy doing, what you'd like to continue to do?
Sort of. I've been trying to make my way out of the direct technical impact of the work and go towards the management of people rather than of the code. That is a, I guess, 25-year goal now. So kind of trying to stepstone my way of moving up to manage technical people and help them get the job done that they're trying to get done, and then go up and manage the work until I'm managing more of the company, sort of thing.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So you have a defined goal in your head that you're working towards. That's good to hear.
Yep. So I guess it clicked when I finished my MBA and eventually started my master's in cybersecurity. And so I did cybersecurity engineering instead of management path. And I was like, I like the technical. I'm good at it. I can figure it out. But I like interacting with people more. I like talking. Heck, I started a podcast to get more people exposure.
You started a podcast to talk more? No, I was
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. Well, I need to practice talking more because this career path I've decided on that I'm excited about, I'm going to have to talk to people and be more. I mean, when you get into that level of managing people, communication is your job rather than technical grind and code writing. So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
I think I'm finally excited about some sort of career path rather than just going with the flow, picking what's in front of me. I mean, I could have been a code monkey the rest of my life, but I rose my hand and said I want to lead somebody. So
Okay. It's interesting how, our life experiences, our family, our children, everything kind of bring us to those decisions and what we choose to do. I would have to say myself is the opposite of that. So at one point in time, I was in a supervisor role, but I only had one direct report. My company instituted a new supervisor system they called the group supervisor, basically realign everyone so that each supervisor would have a few more people underneath them and not as many supervisors, trying to kind of like thin out the middle management.
Mm-hmm.
When that came about, they asked me if I would be interested in doing that. And so I had a few questions, how would it operate, things like that. Would it be a pay increase? And when I received some of the responses, I made the decision to not submit my candidacy for that. I was like, you know what? I would prefer to just do the work that I am assigned, do what I need to, but I don't want to manage or supervise other individuals.
Yeah, you don't need everybody to be a manager, but you do need everybody to be a leader, like we talked about on the last one.
Yep.
Because even though you may not have someone reporting to you, you need to be able to lead your work and make sure everybody knows what you've done and how you've done it, so that either somebody else could come and do it, or heaven forbid you leave and they're stuck shorthanded, sort of thing.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up because, me and Steven are as what most people would call like the epitome of the millennial generation, born in, well, I won't say the year we're born.
80s to 90s, right?
Yeah.
It's somewhere in that band.
Yep. But basically, most of our generation, if they expect to move up within certain companies or get higher and higher pay increases, we're expected to continually change companies. I know you brought this up before. I've heard on average 3 to 7 years at most before it's time to find either a new industry or a new company to work for. I myself am now on my 4th job after graduating college, and I can say without a doubt that it's been the number one thing that has helped me grow as a person and in my career, is to not be complicit in the position that you were in. So I definitely want to remind all of my listeners that if you feel like you're in a job that isn't going anywhere, probably time to find somewhere else to work.
Yeah, I will say speak up to your supervisor if you can, because I did have somebody quit on me when I was like, you're so good, I'd rather have you in the company than you leave the company if you don't like the work here, sort of thing, because they may work with you. I know we try and get our SMEs paid pretty good with the contracts we have, so if they want to shift around the company, we want to do that for them. And at least in the world of government contracting, you can make more in the same company if you move to a different contract sometimes, because the contract you're under might be pay scaled to where you can't make any more. They physically can't demand any more money for your talents on that contract, but they may have a contract over here that you can make more because they're dying for someone of your knowledge, sort of thing.
Well, that's interesting. All right.
So it's I don't know if that's a new thing or if managers haven't used it very well in the past, but obviously I'm only talking about one industry. I don't know every industry out there, so you never know. Don't be at a Starbucks, I guess, and be like, well, I'm gonna go see if I can get another Starbucks job. I have no idea how that works. It might work. I don't know. But you probably don't want to tell them that you're shopping around a local coffee shop or something, because then you might get in trouble there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't tell any industry or white collar or blue collar job that you're shopping around.
Yeah.
And you going into management, I think this this is intriguing because I'm sure that you've heard this before, and you can tell me if you agree with this, but you should always be very cautious about providing any type of information to your employer. And if you are considering leaving and currently looking around, or even if you're not, I wouldn't share that with the company that I'm currently with.
I think it depends on your manager. Me entering the world of it, I want my employees to feel comfortable enough to where they can tell me they're unhappy and they're shopping around, because I will either fight. If they're good enough, I will fight for them to stay in our company somewhere else. If it's the work that's uninteresting or the personnel that's uninteresting, or I may know of a job that somebody else needs someone like you, because the management style I've been taught in our company is that you want to make your employees better than yourself or greater than yourself. And if they're not satisfied doing that and can't do that under you where they're at now, then it's time to look elsewhere for them. And you can find talent in the talent pool, even though they may not be as good that you hire on. As long as you have that mentality, you can make them better. That's the style we've been taught, at least.
That's good. That's good to hear. Because I don't think that a lot of corporations operate that way, but I'm glad to hear that that is becoming more common, or at least with your company, they're pushing more towards that.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, I think it's a healthier way to manage a workforce and build up talented people rather than letting them stagnate or leave. And it builds a bit more of that loyalty and trust between you and the company. And then it also, I mean, we've talked about ESOPs and employee ownership, which is the new pension, in my opinion, which pensions are really the way loyalty was established back in the day, because you work for a company so long and they tell you we're going to take care of you in retirement.
Yep, and I do think that ESOPs, for the most part, are essentially a new pension, as it does try and provide that camaraderie and commitment to a particular company, because they are promising to make sure that you are financially set if you were to continue your employment with them up into retirement.
Yeah. And I think the statistic goes, like, if you've been in an ESOP over 3 years and you start to see what the account can do, like, you never want to leave.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
3 years of growth can be, if the company's doing good, astronomical, and then you project that out, if it keeps going, it's crazy amounts of money in retirement. Yep. You almost don't have to have any other side retirement fund, even though you should, because it's, ESOPs are a single stock and it's risky. So you want to diversify, but the potential there is pretty great.
Yep. Now, with your company's ESOP, and I know we're slightly on a tangent to careers in general.
Part of the career.
Yeah, it is.
Might want to find a career in an ESOP company.
That's right.
You want to shoot me a resume.
So after they have provided you the funds based off the company's stock rated value, are you allowed to take that money and move it into other mutual funds and things like that, or do you have to leave it in that company's stock value?
You leave it in the ESOP account until you retire, quit, or otherwise terminated.
Okay.
But then once you leave the company, unless if you have a giant portfolio of their stock, you get it in it is essentially just transferred to your 401k, and it'll go to whatever your automatic contributions are.
Okay.
So it's tax deferred dollars. So it acts as your tax deferred account 401k, not Roth or anything like that.
All right.
Nor is it cash. But they get around that a little bit because, they say the limit of 401ks are, I think it's like 23,000 right now or whatever. But
per year.
But the true limit is what's included in the company match. So I think the true limit is like 69,000 or something. So companies can put in all the way up to that into your 401k. And I think the ESOP, I don't know if the ESOP counts towards that or if it's even more special on top of that. I'm not anywhere near those figures, so I haven't had to worry about it. But that'll get into the financial independence talk since we're But yeah, ESOP companies, I think they're great. I've drank the Kool-Aid. I think not every company should be them, because then we wouldn't be able to privately trade stocks, or publicly trade stocks, but maybe every company should. I think Bernie Sanders would be pretty happy if he saw every company was an ESOP company, because then they're all growing and treating their employees well in retirement, at least.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And I may not be drinking Kool-Aid, but I do think it is about time to grab another whiskey. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
Enter the circus music, I guess.
That's right.
Now that pour's done, Bernheim barrel proof to wash down our discussion. So, what is it? Coming in at 125 proof. So,
yeah, this is
PJ
definitely
starts slurring his words.
this is definitely a higher proof bourbon, but it is quite delicious. I'm happy we are drinking this. It's interesting you mentioned about ESOPs and publicly traded companies. I have had the opportunity to work for both. Of the 4 companies I have worked for, 2 of them were publicly traded, both Fortune 500 companies, and the other 2 were 100% employee-owned ESOP companies. I can definitely see the benefits from each, but me personally, I do enjoy the ESOP more. I really do, and luckily that is where I currently am, or that's what they offer.
Yeah, you have a lot more. I don't know if you have a lot more say in how the companies run, because somebody's got to make decisions, and it's hard to listen to the masses. But you do have a lot more stake in the outcome when it comes to how the company succeeds. You don't have a CEO that's tied to some external entity telling him how to run the company. The ESOP CEO can say, well, if I get in a tight spot, I can go poll my employees because they're part owners and understand what their buy-in is and make a decision that way.
Not so much the shareholders, if you will. I know
the employees become the shareholders.
Yep.
So you can trust your CEO to try at least to do what's best for you. And if he can't figure it out, come talk to you, sort of thing.
Yep. I think the one negative that I've found, though it could eventually be a positive, just based on the time that you were in there. But with the publicly traded companies, majority of them have stock purchasing programs that you can buy stock in the company in. And then if you choose to turn around, sell that, and kind of dip your hands into the stock market, while with an ESOP, if you want to get involved in the stock market, you need to open up your own brokerage account, and you'll have to do some of that legwork yourself. But I've seen the paperwork on it, but it appears that for the most part ESOPs grow exponentially like 401ks, but they do seem to yield higher returns. Though it's a relatively new concept. I think ESOPs have, you might know this more than me, but they haven't been around for a significantly long time.
I mean, at least like half a century, but that's still pretty young.
That's pretty young, considering that we have companies like Ford and U.S. Steel that were on the publicly traded stock exchange 150 years ago.
Long time. So they're not, I mean, they're older than us, but they're not they're not old by the classical definition of the world.
Yep. And we spend a lot of time talking about finance so far, and what is a career if not a way to finance yourself and your family. So when people talk about careers, for the most part, most people do not go into a particular career just with the sole goal of saying, I love doing this, I want to do it. No, you go and you get into a career and you work because you need to make money to support yourself and your family.
Sometimes just yourself.
Yeah.
But then, also careers, you got to decide if you're going a certain career path that affects how your options on family. Like, if you want to be a doctor right out of the gate, you may or may not want to find someone and have a family until you're done with med school or something like that.
And I'd be interesting to look up the statistics on that, because I agree. I bet you would find the majority of people who become medical doctors wait until later in life to get married and to start a family. I couldn't imagine going through that type of collegiate study while also raising a family.
I know it's been done. I know a few people on both sides. So people that waited, I mean, they had relationships and things, but they never really took them too seriously. And then there were those that fell in love through med school and got married. And then there are ones that were married when they started med school. I don't know them, but I saw them on the stage when my brother-in-law walked.
Okay.
When he got his medical degree. There were some that had like 2 or 3 kids and like getting robed, and I was like, how?
I agree.
You must have had a banger spouse,
Yeah,
and you
good
were
on
just
you.
grinding.
That's amazing.
Like, or the spouse, or you're in tremendous debt and you gotta work your way out now. I don't know how they do it, but more power to them. Hopefully it works out. But yeah, that affects your career. So all I'm saying is, like, in my viewpoint, choose a career that means a lot to you, but also don't give it too much weight, because you may change when you're 35 like myself and say, hey, I want to go down a different path. This has suited me pretty well, but I think I'm more meant for this other side.
Nope, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. You know, it's never too late to do something different. I've heard plenty of success stories of where people, you know, worked in a particular industry for 10, 20, 30 years, and then they're 45 and they've decided, you know what, I want to do something different. And it's never too late to change your life trajectory, and whether that be just finding a completely new job in a different industry, or going back to school and getting a degree either for the first time or a degree in a different field. You know, I never want any of our listeners to feel like they are trapped in terms of their career opportunities.
Yeah, especially if you're living in the U.S., you got a vast amount of options, whether it be going back to school or jumping career paths. I mean, if you have a good manager, they can see the potential in someone over another person, even if the experience isn't there on paper, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So don't be fearful of submitting something, even if you have just a unique resume rather than a catered resume.
And now that most resumes are being read by AI and not a human, I'm not even sure how much weight that pulls anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get your resume through the back door of someone you know in a company, then you might not have as good a chance as someone just submitting online.
Which is, I'm glad you brought that up too. And I know I've said that a lot, but would you mind sharing, like, how many different companies have you worked for, Stephen?
I think this is my fourth as well.
Okay. Were all of the positions that you came into through situations like that, or did you like cold apply to a couple of them and they actually called you back?
Yeah, no, they have all been, well, a couple of them were just because I had to badge flip, because that's the town we live in. But the two that got me to where I am today, one was a reference from a friend who already had a job a year before me, coming out of college, and so I did good on that one. And then the second one was, before that one, I had interviewed with another company who wanted me but couldn't pay me enough. I went back to them to see if they had anything open, because they liked me. They offered me a job the first time but couldn't pay me as much, and they were like, yeah, we might have something coming down the pipe. And so I went in and interviewed with them, and before I lost my other job from downsizing, I had that job lined up. So
that's good.
Really, it's just getting to know people and making relationships that's going to have an easier time in the door. Yep. I didn't have to do any cold calling or anything as much as I would have.
Yeah, that networking can be so huge. I know it's been said before, and I'll say it again, but it's almost not what you know, but who you know. And I can say that 3 of the 4 companies that I've worked for, only one of them was just a submitted resume and cover letter applying for a job. The other 3 jobs that I got hired onto was because I either had a reference from someone who already worked there, or, well, no, it was all, yeah, three of the 4 companies were all,
oh, wow.
I had that in, if you will, you know, referred to that company by someone who was already employed with them.
Yeah, unless if you have like a spectacular resume catered to the job at hand, like, knowing someone helps a lot more.
Yep, and it can be very scary, especially if you're in an industry where a degree is required. You know, you have this education, but you don't have this work experience, and unless you know a few people in there, it can be quite a burden to finally find a position that, 1, they will actually accept you and give you an interview, but 2, enjoy. You know, and sometimes you feel like you're in a position of, well, I haven't had a job for 2 months. Like, I really need something, and it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, and you still gotta know your stuff, because at least from my perspective, if I recommend a candidate to one of our positions, I expect you to perform.
Yes.
So it's who you know to get in the door, but it's what you know once you get there.
Yep, I agree with that.
Really, the argument for a career / growth and development is, can you get better? Can you improve yourself? Are you better than you were yesterday? And a lot of managers that are good will look for that in a candidate in the interview rather than your technical skills.
Yep.
If you're, especially when we interview entry-level people, if you're sitting there like, I did all this stuff in college, I'm the best, I don't need to improve anymore, I already know everything, that's not going to count as much for when we interview someone that's like a hair below you, but they're like, man, you guys are doing cool stuff and I need to learn this, I need to learn that. I'm not good at that, but I know how I can get better with this, this, and this. That's going to be a much better, ambitious person that companies are going to want in the door than the know-it-all that doesn't think they need to improve.
Yep, yeah, and continuously improving yourself in any career that you choose is so important. And then having that mindset of wanting to continuously prove and not stagnate, as we mentioned before. Most companies, look for that, at least in the white-collar industry.
Yeah, but we're like a decent amount into this podcast, and you still haven't told me what your vision of the careers is. I told mine at the very beginning.
I would say my vision of career is what you want your life and your work to be, because as you know, at least here in America, for the most part, you go to school until you're around age 18. You either join the workforce or go into college to get a degree to eventually join the workforce. And then you work for roughly 40 years before retirement. The majority of your life here on this earth will be spent in your chosen career path, in your chosen work. And for sometimes even more so than being with your family, unfortunately, especially if you have long working hours away from them. So your career can define who you are. Now, I'm not saying that your career is who you are, but who you are defines the career that you want to be in.
It's going to shape your worldview more than maybe the time you spend with your family.
Yep, the shape of your sheep, if you will.
Yeah. Hey, hark back to another episode. Yeah, that's a good point. We are what we consume, right? So if you're just knee deep in the technical day to day, then your mind's gonna be processing on that level all the time, rather than if, like we've said, you go the management of people route that I have been going, you may build up your skills of talking to people and things like that. So your everyday life is gonna be influenced by the skills you build on the job. But like you said, especially if you have to be that breadwinner and you have to be that dad because the mom can't work or the kids have issues that need special attention from the mom or someone there all the time, then you are grinding your butt off to support your family. It may be, 60, 80-hour weeks, if that's what it takes to survive, and your mental state may or may not be good and you may not have that good family support, but hopefully when you come out of it, everybody's alive and well.
Yep. And as we mentioned at the very start of this episode, being a parent is in and of itself a career. So you have your career, and that, partially defines you or shapes your worldview, and hopefully your family or your spouse and children do that as well, so that you're continually growing in that position, not stagnating, as we mentioned before, but that your career is pushing you towards becoming the best version of yourself that you want to see, and whether that be your job industry, whether that be the particular position that you have, but constantly striving to be the best you are and the best parent that you can be.
Yeah, because you expect a lot from yourself. So striving up to that standard is really hard sometimes, and you got to relax every once in a while and think back of what you've grown and how you've cultured your family and yourself and their success anywhere you look usually.
Yeah, and that's why we're drinking this nice wheated bourbon right now, wheated whiskey, to relax a little.
Yeah, and discuss how we can be better as parents and make the society a better place.
Oh, no, just You should have said Dad's Discuss, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we can better Dad's Discuss.
Dad's Discuss. Like, comment, and subscribe so that we get more attention and have more people
There we go.
conversing about what we've said. We'll be in the I'll be in the comments at least. I don't know how much PJ will be perusing the comments. I know he doesn't get glued to his phone as much as I probably do. But
I'd say I should probably do better about that. But I do enjoy this recording aspect, and I hope all of our listeners enjoy listening to us in whatever we tend to talk about in our Dads Discuss topics.
Yep. Any other questions you have for me, since we're kind of polar opposites on careers? You knew what you were going to do. I have floundered for years and turned out okay.
Yeah, I do think that's really, really interesting, because I've heard many people say, well, if you want to go back to school and get a different degree, if you don't do it in your chosen field, but you like your industry, get like an MBA or something. Mm-hmm. And my personal thought is I would never do that. Like, I don't want to go get a business degree because I feel like that would push me towards becoming like an upper management level position, and that's just not my mentality whatsoever. So, which is why I decided to drop out of grad school, in which I was pursuing a master's in structural engineering, but I dropped out of that as I figured the financial
benefit.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes. Maybe that's the whiskey. No, the financial benefit actually came from me pursuing getting my professional engineering license, more so than getting a master's degree. And so that is what I ended up pursuing and eventually obtaining.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because in the workforce, the PE makes a lot more income.
Yep.
Yeah, because the master's for that side of work would be more towards starting to do more research.
More research, exactly. Not as much hands-on, if you will, or not as much practical applications.
Yeah. As for computer development stuff, it doesn't really matter. You can teach yourself software and figure it out. I think the engineering courses and the degrees help you get a guidepost of, where to go and who to be, sort of thing, and how to learn specific topics. But if you already know how to do those things, you'll figure them out anyways. But they help. And, having a degree that you worked through does look good on a resume that you committed to something and finished it. Same as getting a PE or things like that. In, the cyber world, it's all about certificates rather than degrees. So you get a certificate, it knows you worked hard enough to get that.
Okay.
And it means something. The MBA, I got that because I said, you know what, I may or may not want to manage people one day, is what I said years ago. And I was like, this college is offering a certification in innovation and technology management, and it's 6 courses, and you get a certificate, and all 6 of those courses count towards an MBA. So if you want to pursue that later, you can. So I went through it, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I got through it, and the courses were pretty interesting, and they were mostly on leadership and stuff. So I'll finish this MBA, and turns out they teach you a lot of stuff about the financial world, and you can start reading spreadsheets and stock information and things like that. So I thought it was pretty beneficial.
Cool.
Things you learn that you didn't think you'd learn, sort of thing.
Yeah. But that you were interested in, so that's good to hear.
But they may not have enticed me, because back then my brain was still, I need to be good at technical. So innovation and technology management sounds right up the alley, right? If worst case, I learned something more about the technical field and things like that.
Okay. Oh. Now, in your experience with your newfound love of wanting to work and manage people more so than the day-to-day grind of technical aspects, do you think the size of the company makes a difference, or would you be willing to be more like on a smaller team of individuals, or do you want to see yourself managing 20, 30 people, like as a whole department head, and how that would shape your view of your career path?
Yeah, so the main point I've heard is the theory of 5, or that's as part of it, is that you should only ever really be in charge of 5 people. Because once you go above 5 people, you start to lose focus, and you can't actually do good for those people as well. I think it's pretty true. I have to manage 9 people right now and the technical work, and it's very overwhelming, and I don't think there's enough hours in the day usually. And a lot of times I feel like I've dropped the ball on a few of those people because other people take more time. You have to leave them hands off usually. But where was this question going?
Management size.
Yeah. So really, you shouldn't have more than 5 direct reports, but I wouldn't mind managing contracts that are way above that sort of thing. Leading divisions of hundreds of people could be really fun. You have a lot more, like we've talked about, as far as like being a jack of all trades, trying to figure out the landscape of a lot of people. Keeps the day-to-day even more interesting than one product, because I'm really over just one product these days. But that in itself is a career path. You can be in charge of one product and make a good living and live out the rest of your days until retirement and make a damn good product, which is what we pride ourselves on right now. Would I have the entrepreneurial spirit to go out and create something new? Yeah, if I had to. I mean, that's what we're doing in this podcast sort of thing.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I'm going to start introducing myself as Peter, PJ, entrepreneur. No.
We don't make any money, but if we did, we could say, hey, we've built something.
That's right. Money. No, I never thought about it like that. Okay, that's interesting. That's definitely, and I think you've covered this before, but it takes a certain type of person to be a good supervisor or a good manager, and I can see that you have those types of qualities. You're team focused. Same way with being a father, like yes. You want your priorities to be what's best for the children and how can I help them grow as much as they can. So but it does take a certain type of mindset that not everyone has.
Yeah, I try to remind myself every day of how can I make this person greater than me. How can I do better? How can I make them better than myself, who's already a struggling dad that's sleep deprived and I know a few things about the world and the subject matter, but I need to make these other people more. It should be fun. Hopefully I succeed. If not, maybe the podcast will take off. And
there we go.
Even though I'd rather work and do good and make a career out of other people succeeding and giving them rewards for it. Because, the management structure, sometimes they make more money, sometimes they don't, depending on how successful their teams are. Typically, if you have a successful team, you're rewarding them and making them a lot of money, too, along the way.
That makes sense.
But if you're talking career field and what's best for your family, I'm not at that level yet where it becomes a problem for the family. I'm still sustaining and having a good time with it. I've had plenty of people above me that have been trying to mentor me to say, keep the balance, and whatever career path you choose, once you manage a lot of people, the home work life balance becomes a little bit wonky. So that's the main piece of advice I would pass down from the people who passed down it to me. Okay. You can dream for the stars and want to manage a bunch of people or start a business or something, but it's going to take away from those special moments at home.
Yep. Yeah. Everything is a time commitment, and the more responsibility you have, the more time that you would have to devote to that. So I can easily see that being some worthwhile advice, especially if you'd like to be there for your family and see those important milestones of your children growing up. The age-old adage of if someone is working so hard that they miss their children's dance recital or their child's graduation, you don't want to be the person whose career job-wise is so focused that you miss out on your own family.
Yeah, just like the movie Jingle All the Way. So if you haven't seen that, go get a refresher on it and get back to me.
Yep, that's a classic. Love that one.
All right, well, the kids are getting a little rowdy and it's getting a little late and the whiskey's getting a little empty. So if you don't have any more career advice for our listeners, I think we can head on out.
I agree. And the only advice I would end this one on is please like and subscribe. And if you have any additional comments you'd like to drop, hit us up on all of our socials.
Yep. And this is us fading out into the distance. Thanks for listening to Dad's Discuss.
Please like and subscribe wherever you are listening.
Also, comment any topics you would like us to discuss and share with us with your friends and family.
Finally, if you would like to be on the podcast or discuss any topics, please reach out via our contact information below.
Your everyday life, they're probably fighting. Your